taste and see. Only lavender dreams, baby. What can I do when a million things are running through? Million things I can't undo. I just sleepwalk, I just sleep talk. That's all I got. What can I say with a million things I can't erase?
Growing up, I could never fit myself into a particular ethnic box. You know, the literal box you have to mark on standardized tests? Yeah, that one. The hardest question was never the actual academic side of the test, it was choosing which ethnicity or race to select, and this was all before the actual test had even started. Needless to say, I was utterly confused as a little first grader, and if choose one was the only option, well, then I was even more perplexed. How could I pick one ethnicity when I was equally both? I wasn't fully Asian, but I wasn't fully Caucasian. Unfortunately, at the time, I saw this as a flaw, and I looked down on myself because of this. But now I understand that I'm not less just because I don't fit perfectly into a particular box. I want you to know that you can be your own person, and you don't have to let your ethnicity or culture define who you are. If you're feeling out of place or disconnected from others around you for whatever reason, realize that you're not alone, even when it seems like it. In my experience, being part of two vastly different cultures meant having a lot of cultural expectations. Each side of my family had certain standards, and it felt like I was always being pulled in two completely different directions. Simply put, I could never satisfy both cultures' expectations, no matter how hard I tried. I always felt inferior to both sides of my family because genetically I was only half, but now I realize that I don't need to constantly compare myself to others. I might not be the smartest student, best musician, or strongest athlete, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with not being perfect. I don't have to live life pretending to be someone that I'm not. So please, don't cover up your unique self by trying to mold yourself into what your culture says you should be. Don't lose your authentic self by trying to be like everyone else. If you're new here, or you don't really know who I am, hi there, my name's Elsa Luan. I love fitness, food, violin, beautiful sunsets, long walks, and basically anything in the kitchen. I'm half Chinese, half white, aka Weijin, and I've struggled pretty much my entire life with fitting in, whether it was trying to fit in with people who didn't share the same values or beliefs as me, or trying to fit in because I culturally didn't feel accepted. I've spent over half my life being taller and bigger than everyone around me, and that led me to believe the lie that I was simply too big. On top of feeling insecure about the size and shape of my body, I quickly realized that my physical features were also very different from my peers, and a lot of the time I felt excluded simply because I didn't visually fit in with either ethnic group. I didn't look like either side of my family. What made it even harder was that some years I happened to look very Asian, while other years I looked very white. I know this changing around is common for mixed kids, but it confused a lot of people, including myself, and it was just awkward what people would say. Some people thought I looked really white, some people thought I looked really Asian, and then occasionally people would see me as Hispanic or another ethnicity. I know I got the "what are you?" question many times growing up, and honestly this question doesn't bother me because I know people are just genuinely curious. What bothered me though was the constant pressures that I felt from both cultures. If I was in contact with the Asian side of the family, I was too white, and then when I was in contact with the white side of the family, I was too Asian. It seemed as though no one really accepted me. Maybe they did, but it just didn't feel like it to my 8-year-old self. Geographically, where I grew up in the States, I was never accepted in the Asian community. No matter what I did to try to please members of my family or society, I never lived up to their standards. Bone. It's like a... We didn't even call that a bone. I call that... like that. If you know me, you know that I can't speak or write much Chinese at all, except my name and a few random words that are pretty useless in getting around, and a lot of the time I'd be intentionally or unintentionally criticized for my lack of knowledge in this area. A story that I'll mention a little bit later in this video. Anyway, this month I've been doing a lot of self-reflection, and I realized that I have a story to share that I think will really encourage those of you in a similar circumstance. I know, I wish I would have had someone to look up to back then when I was dealing with these issues.
Oh my gosh. Do you have sensitive teeth?
What? Yes, very.
You could be feeling pressure from your family, or you could just be someone who's feeling rejected or lonely. Whatever your circumstance, I want to show you that being your authentic self is good enough, and you don't have to live life trying to constantly please others around you. Of course, we all fear judgment, but I want to remind you that at the end of the day, the people who don't accept you don't determine what you do in this life. Life is simply too short to be constantly seeking approval from others. I'd be leaving out a huge part of my health, fitness, and self-acceptance journey if I didn't mention the cultural struggles I experienced growing up. Thankfully, my family has always been there for me, but I see now that my issues with food and body image really stemmed from me feeling unaccepted by people around me. I valued other people's opinions way too much, and I always felt insufficient, which led to low self-esteem. For a long time, I either wanted to be fully Chinese or fully white, but not both. It was just a weird place to be. It's like being stuck in a whole different world. I grew up always thinking that I didn't belong in either group, and I don't blame anyone for this. It just happened that I was a more sensitive individual who happened to experience many instances that led me to believe this lie. But a question that's rolled through my mind for pretty much my entire life has been, how Asian do I have to be Asian enough? How Chinese do I have to look and act to be accepted by the Chinese community? And of course, there came a time where I had a bit of an identity crisis. My first grade self was obsessed with trying to be as Asian as possible. Then a year later, I did a 180 and tried to cover up my natural skin color by putting on tons of white powder. Yeah, that was me. Anytime I'd be in contact with Asian individuals, I'd try to embrace more of my Asian side, and then anytime I was with Caucasian individuals, I'd try to embrace my white side. I see now how I'd gotten so good at the chameleon effect, changing who I was depending on who was around me, and that's the most dangerous game. Now, I finally understand that I don't have to look like everyone else.
But my cheek. Probably gonna get sick now. What is that what Nyanya says?
Well,
If you bite your cheek, yeah.
I don't know. Chinese people think if you're swollen in your mouth, something's going on.
Something's going on.
Yeah.
I can be Elsa Luan, the half Chinese, half white girl who doesn't need everyone's approval. You don't need everyone's approval. And the most important thing I've learned from all this is that my identity isn't in my ethnicity. My identity is in Jesus and the work he did for me on the cross. So anytime I'm having doubts about who I am, I remember that I'm the daughter of a king, and that's a huge privilege and honor that I don't deserve as a sinner. It's only because of God's grace that I'm here today. And I just want to say that the way we categorize ourselves on earth is not how God sees us at all. For believers, he sees us as his children, period. And that's the beautiful thing about salvation. It's for everyone of every color, every class, and every background. It's for everyone who trusts in Jesus' name. I told you that I'd tell you a story, and I guess I'd better keep my promise. Well, one summer day when I was 12, a really nice Chinese boy moved in next to us, and he was 15, almost 16. One day when we were playing with his dog, he noticed someone on my patio that he'd never seen before. When he asked who that Caucasian woman was, I told him that was my mom. And he asked me, wait, so you're not fully Chinese? Do we even speak Chinese? Stunned, I had to answer no to both questions, and then he seemed super disappointed. After he asked me a lot more about my cultural background and made me feel super guilty for not speaking Chinese, I left his yard feeling kind of heartbroken. And guess what? I never heard from him again. This experience bothered me for so many years because, number one, the boy that I liked rejected me for a really dumb reason. Once he found out that I was only half Chinese, he didn't want to talk with me anymore.
Oh my gosh, Dad!
Reason number two, I felt like a failure simply because he seemed to think being half Chinese was inadequate. It was as if he felt like I was an absolute disgrace to the Chinese race. I look back and wish I would have seen that I didn't need his approval. And back then, being the people pleaser that I was, I literally contemplated what I could do to change myself. I was angry and wanted to be somebody different. The key idea I was missing all those years is that I don't need to change myself for anyone. I was so used to tiptoeing around, trying to make everyone happy, that in the process I lost who I truly was, and I had low self-esteem for years. Constantly putting myself down, constantly second-guessing myself, constantly caring about what people said about me, constantly trying to change myself. I was angry, frustrated, confused, and sad all at once. But just know that even when life seems so dark, God still has a plan for you and he doesn't make mistakes. Know that he made you perfectly. If others can't see that, well, they're blind to the truth. I want to remind you that no matter your size, ethnicity, weight, popularity, or worldly success, that God loves and cares for you. I can finally see at 18 that my worth is independent from my earthly accomplishments.
Yeah, I'm gonna be drinking one of these Suja immune boosting drinks. They're really like little shots of like turmeric and
ginger and like lots of good things. I kind of feel like a cold's coming on, maybe not, I could be wrong, but you know, I'm gonna do everything I can, take my vitamins, you know, I do that anyway, but trying to drink one of these, hopefully it'll help, maybe. But yeah, we're gonna get ready for my last orchestra concert in high school. I'm so excited, but also it's gonna be really sad, but I'm mostly excited. Yeah, I don't really know what I'm gonna do for dinner tonight, because it's kind of, dinner time is like when the concert is, so I'm not sure I'm gonna like pack a snack, or if I'm going to just eat really late tonight. I have no idea. But yeah, so cheers. I'm so proud to be the girl God created me to be, regardless of my race. I'm worthy not because of my ethnicity, body, earthly accomplishments, or outward appearance. I'm worthy because God says I am. To the girl or boy out there who doesn't really fit in because of his or her personality, ethnicity, or beliefs, know that it's okay to be different. I know that this doesn't make it any easier, but I do know that talking about what's going on internally can really bring to the surface some things that you probably never even knew were there. At least that's the way it was for me. But being bitter about the past does nothing but hurt you and prevent you from living life to the fullest right now. Trust me, I was bitter for so long, and I'm still working on healing those parts of my life. Vengeance does nothing but eat away the soul. I don't know about you, but I don't want to live the rest of my life with that kind of bitterness. So let's talk confidence. Back then, it didn't matter how many A's I got, how many violin competitions I won, or how much I excelled in extracurricular activities. I was constantly second-guessing myself and putting myself down. Violin was the one thing that helped with my confidence. It taught me that I have to show up confident even if I don't feel like it. It's taught me that when I second-guess myself, I mess up.
Perfect strawberries. Oh god.
And I'd say that's a life principle. So if you're trying to boost your confidence, remember that true confidence isn't a look, it's a mindset. I thought that to be confident, I just had to be skinny, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I can say for certain that my self-esteem was crushed when I thought that boys didn't like me because I was mixed. That may have been partially true, but it wasn't that way all the time.
Dad, thank you. This looks really good. Yeah, Autumn, broke my wrap on the side because I dropped it while it was frozen.
Violent careers over.
How's the season?
Well, it's really good.
With all these self-esteem issues, it became almost too easy to manipulate food and fitness. I thought that maybe if I looked a certain way, that maybe, just maybe, I'd be accepted. It gave me a false sense of worth and validation, because it was always in the name of health. It's all quite illogical to me now, but back then it made perfect sense.
Oh, this is such a pretty color. Whoa. This is really smooth. This tastes like strawberry ice cream in texture. It's so silky.
The strong emphasis on thinness in Asian culture made things even worse. As stupid as it sounds, I thought that I could fit in more with my Asian side if I fit this beauty standard. Lie after lie, I started down a path that I didn't even realize was destructive. I didn't even realize how feeling so out of place could affect my relationship with food and my body. Of course, I don't blame anyone but myself for these issues. It was just my way of dealing with all this. My whole goal in saying all this is just to hopefully relate to some of you who may be in a season of loneliness or a season of feeling unaccepted for being you. Just remember that God's given you this beautiful life that He wants you to make the most out of. Not every person will like you, and that's just life, unfortunately. For me as a Christian, each day my goal is to bring God glory, even in the tiniest things. The issues I've had concerning my ethnicity are, in a sense, dumb, because I know that I shouldn't allow these people to dictate my life. I find it so comforting to know that when we're all Christians, Jesus doesn't care what we look like. Salvation is for everyone, no matter the color of their skin. I have to remind myself to be kingdom-focused. As long as I'm continuing to trust God throughout the trials in my life, I'm never truly alone. So lastly, I just want to say that feeling inadequate all those years wasn't necessarily all my fault, but I could have been more intentional about who I was hanging out with. If a person's bringing you down and discouraging you, find a different person.
That's so juicy.
Wow. The chocolate's so good.
I know that when I started surrounding myself with people who genuinely understood me and accepted me for me, I realized that I wasn't always thinking about changing myself for their approval. As a Christian, I asked myself if the people I was hanging out with were helping me be closer to Jesus or not.
It was. It's so good.
And of course, I still have friends who are non-believers who I can pour into and plant seeds in, but I also need strong Christian friends who can encourage me in my walk with the Lord. But even if you're not a Christian, make sure to surround yourself with people that will make you a better person. It's so true when they say that you are who you surround yourself with. I also realized when I found people who truly loved me for being me, race and ethnicity became less and less of an issue. And this is a great reminder in anything to always look at the person's heart, not their skin color. And I think that's super powerful. So I've always struggled with this idea of, well, what am I? Not to mention that back when my parents married, it wasn't really custom for my dad to marry someone who wasn't Asian, so there was already some tension there. But just because I'm half Asian, half white doesn't mean that I'm divided evenly down the middle. I'm free to be my own person. And the same goes for you, no matter what ethnicity you are. I understand now that it doesn't matter what I am genetically. What matters is my love for others and love for Jesus. So if you're out there right now feeling a little lonely, a little scared, a little rejected, please know that Jesus is here for you. Even though I'm a flawed human being, I'm here for you too. I guess the thing I've learned from being mixed is that each side, each culture has its own values, and I won't ever be able to live up to those standards. I've tried for so long to fit myself into a box, but maybe I was created to fit outside the box. You were created with your own personality and passions, so don't just strip them away to fit in with the world. Being mixed has taught me that who I am has nothing to do with my ethnicity and everything to do with Jesus. It's taught me that even though people may not accept me because of my beliefs or mixed race, that I don't have to let that bring me down.
What?
The best advice I can give to you is to talk to yourself positively and trust that what Jesus has in store for you in this life is way more wonderful than anything you could have ever imagined.
Understand you're stronger than you